today to talk about the collaborative research projects between the HEIs and schools in the CaBan region with a focus on impact on learners and learning. So drosodd at Jeremy. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr I chi. Fyddwch chi angen i'w neidio clusffonau, os gwelwch yn dda. Prynawn da pawb. Dwi'n mynd I gychwyn trwy gofyn 2 gwestiwn I chi. Dwi'n mynd I gofyn, rhoi 2 ffaith a wedyn gofyn 2 cwestiwn I chi. Ffaith, mae yna mwy o pobl yn byw ar y ddeiar heddiw nag sydd wedi marw erioed. Right, mae hwnna'n ffaith. Cwestiwn ydy, sut mae'r byd yn newid? Ffaith arall. Mae'r haul yn rhoi digon o egni I ni ar y byd mewn 2 munud I rhedeg y byd, ein egni I gyd, am flwyddyn. Cwestiwn. Sut ydyn ni'n mynd I newid? Sut ydyn ni'n mynd I defnyddio hwnna yn y dyfodol? Mae gennych chi munud I drafod efo'r person drws nesaf chi. Ffordd â chi. Munud. 1 munud. Dyna'r munud wedi mynd. Dyna'r wyrach 2 cwestiwn mwyaf yn y byd dyddiau yma'n dydy. Right? Sut mae'r byd yn mynd I para? Ond, sut mae hwnna yn cyd-fynd efo beth ni'n neud efo CaBan? Wel, mae'r byd yn newid. Mae'r byd addysg yn newid. Mae wedi newid lot yn y blynyddoedd diwetha. A mae dal I newid. A dyn ni fel sefydliad yn gorfod sicrhau bod y proffesiwn, bod pobl dyn ni'n hyfforddi i'r dyfodol yn gallu newid ac yn troi y dysgwyr gydol oes. A mae hwnna'n rhywbeth dyn ni'n mynd I rhannu efo chdi mewn munud. Mae CaBan yn partneriaeth. Dwi ddim yn mynd I ddweud dim mwy, ond dwi yn mynd I ddangos ffilm sydd yn 2 funud, just I ddangos pwy sydd yn ein partneriaeth ni yn CaBan. A mae yn Saesneg, so gewch chi tynnu'ch clusffonau.
Education in Wales is entering an exhilarating new era, both in developing a world-class curriculum for schools and within teacher education. Whether Wales is already your home or you're new to the country, you have an opportunity to play a part in these exciting and motivating developments. Along with quality lead schools and their networks and the Regional Schools Office, the University of Chester and Bangor University have collaborated to create an innovative partnership called CaBan, all working together to educate highly capable, ethical and ambitious teachers of the future. Uniquely, all partner groups have played a significant part in devising a suite of outstanding primary and secondary programs for teacher education at both undergraduate and postgraduate level that take into account what is required to prepare you to be an exceptional teacher in Wales. It is a partnership that provides you with a fantastic opportunity to study an initial teacher education course that firmly places all learners at its heart. CaBan's teacher training courses will provide you with a high-quality experience across a network of different and challenging learning environments, including urban and rural, mainstream and special schools, and outdoor education settings. You will have the opportunity to learn Welsh as a complete beginner or enhance your existing language skills through bespoke language support in school and university. Committed schools with well-trained mentors will support your progress towards qualified teacher status in accordance with professional standards for teaching and leadership in Wales. Experienced tutors and researchers in university will provide excellent support and stimulating sessions, and the qualification you gain will equip you to teach within and beyond Wales. If you'd like to find out more about this unique partnership and the CaBan courses on offer through Bangor University and the University of Chester, contact us today.
Fawr, dyna ni. Just cyn I fi gyflwyno yr athro Carl Hughes, Just i ddweud, mae'n fraint, mae'n pleser i mi gallu arwain ar y partneriaeth yma. Ac un o'r partneriaid ni ydy Cierei, a fydd Carl yn sôn chydig bach mwy am hynny rwan. Diolch, Carl.
Diolch yn fawr. Diolch yn fawr. Carl Dweud o pennaeth yr ysgol Addysg ym Mangor. Dwi yn mynd yn siarad yn Cymraeg, ond dysgu dwi. So, challenge ma yn cyflwyno yn Cymraeg. So, sefydliad cydweithredol dros ymchwil addysg, tystiolaeth ac effaith. Da ni'n meddwl am y geiriau yn y teitl yn ffalus iawn, ac os bob un y gair yn meddwl rhywbeth pwysig, sut da ni'n creu ecosystem yn y rhanbarthol ecosystem ymchwil. Gweledigaeth Cierei ydy gwella canlyniadau dysgu a lles dysgwyr trwy'r defnyddio'r ymchwil, gwybodaeth ymchwil, a da ni'n trio defnyddio cyd-datblygiad bob un o'r prosiect ymchwil efo'r ysgolion, efo'r Athrawon mewn ysgolion. A da ni'n trio canolbwyntio ac ymchwil effaith, agos i ymarfer ar dan arweiniad a cyd-destun. So, da ni'n gweithio fel arfer efo'r Athrawon, and ateb be di'r problem ti'n cael, be di'r problem ti'n eisiau gwybod mwy am, a da ni'n defnyddio, da ni'n trio gwneud ymchwil, adeiladu ymchwil ar gwmpas hynny. Da ni'n trio gweithio fel partneriaeth strategol, a efo bob un o'r rhandeiliad sy'n adeiladu gallu ymchwil rhanbarthol. Sori am y Cymraeg. Da ni'n gweld, lot o'r heiriau da ni'n gweld ar hyn o bryd, ond da ni'n meddwl am 4 ohonyn nhw. Sut da ni'n colygu a llydennu arfer gorau i ysgolion? Sut da ni'n gweithio dros y rhanbarthol i adeiladu gallu. Dwi'n jyst siarad tipyn bach am y 2 ohonyn nhw, a mae cydweithredol Graham a Jane yn siarad mwy am rhif 3 a rhif 4 mewn munud. Y nod o Cierei yn reiddiol, ddudodd y Professor Furlong mewn yr adroddiad, ddim digon o'r ymchwil yn digwydd dros Cymru ar gyfer addysg. Ond pan da ni'n gweld o gwmpas Prifysgol Bangor, bob un o'r ysgolion yn y Brifysgol, mae yna llawer o'r ymchwil pwysig i plant, pwysig i teuluoedd, a pwysig i ysgolion yn digwydd mewn ysgolion arall, yn arbennig yn seicoleg. So, dwi'n dod o adran seicoleg, o ysgol seicoleg yn Prifysgol, a dwi'n gwneud ymchwil mewn addysg, ers 20 mlynedd rwan, dwi'n meddwl. Dwi'n dechrau 20 mlynedd yn ôl. A mae yna llawer o'r ymchwil yn yr ysgol iechyd a'r ysgol gwyddol chwaraeon hefyd yn pwysig i plant a pwysig i teuluoedd a'r ysgolion. So, y nod yn reiddiol o Cierei ydi creu sefydliad. Sefydliad mewn y system prifysgol yn wahanol o'r canolfannau. Y canolfannau yn cael ffocws penodol, ond sefydliad i trio casglu bob un canolfannau at ei gilydd i trio creu lle i pobl yn helpu athrawon gwybod beth sy'n digwydd yn y byd ymchwil. So dyna'r nod, as ydych chi'n medru darllen, mae yna llawer o abegenyddau allweddol yn bwysig i plant yn y prifysgol, a y nod ydy'n casglu nhw at ei gilydd i helpu ni ffidio i fewn i'r ysgolion. Adeiladu gallu rhanbarthol, wel, tir yn yr 3 blynedd yn ôl, da ni'n codi tua'r 4 miliwn o grantiau ymchwil. Da ni'n trio creu capacity yn y system lleol, so da ni'n gweithio yn arbennig efo gwe dros y rhanbarthol a creu lot o projects o gwmpas yr myfyrio PhD. Mae Jane yn un ohonyn nhw yn siarad mwy am y gwaith mae hi'n wneud yn yr clwstwr o ysgolion yn Bril mewn munud. So, da ni'n trio gweithio dros y rhanbarthol efo'r cannoedd o'r ysgolion a cannoedd o'r athrawon, trio codi'r safonau o'r capacity yn y system ar gyfer ymchwil. So, rwan dwi'n meddwl dwi'n pasio'r drosodd i Graham i siarad mwy am sut da ni'n gweithio efo'r myfyriwr yn CaBan i helpu nhw yn codi sgiliau ymchwil. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much, folks. I'm very aware that when you go third in 4 people, you've got to really squeeze what you're doing. The first 2 people have overrun slightly, so if I'm quick, that's why. I'm very aware also that some of what I'm presenting to you, I'm really standing on the shoulders of giants, some of whom are in the room who've done a lot of the structural and legwork in putting this work together. So what I want to do is very quickly take you through some of the work we've done to integrate professional inquiry into our new CaBan initial teacher education programs. So firstly, to give you the rationale for these, based on some of the work, if you want to see a little bit more in the poster work out in the other room, you can do that at the break time. But really, starting from before the accreditation documentation came through, we were thinking and looking to integrate practitioner inquiry within our courses sometime before that in our previous partnership working with colleagues in Aberystwyth University. Taking the work of Marilyn Cochran-Smith, setting inquiry a stance, taking that quite firm stand that actually inquiry should be part of teachers' continual professional development. And if we can integrate that and bring that in right from the very start, from that initial teacher education process, then that will start to develop that research activity within what we now call associate teachers, student teachers, as they become newly qualified teachers and then recently and more qualified teachers. This builds on the idea of professional capital, one of those key challenges that Hargreaves and Fulham present as a method for keeping and continually developing teachers within our education system, within this geographic area, within Wales and within the UK. So giving them those opportunities to actually continue to work and be challenged professionally, not, as we've heard, this idea that perhaps teaching is this recipe process that you can go through, but there's actually a reflective, evaluative part of that teacher development as well. And that then links on to some of Nicole's work. It's a real privilege to see her here today and meet her as the work of herself and Susan Graham-Smith has influenced so much of our thinking in this, and there's some other work there that talks about the fact that even if your findings are slightly uncomfortable in what you do, you still need to keep doing them. And if those things mean something has to change about your practice, then you need to change your practice. To actually use that research, not to have it as something which sets out to develop a more marketable type approach, but actually something which is totally about the learning of the children in the class and the impact. So we've used those as a rationale to kind of set out our story, if you like, in designing assessment tasks, designing appropriate checks and monitoring for the associate teachers who are going through all of our programs. If I can give you a couple of examples of these really are the examples put together by my colleagues in terms of some of the assignments and assessment tasks written, so I take no credit for these at all. Those folk who are sat here who've designed some of these know who they are, but really what we needed to do was, particularly with our postgraduates, was to not assume that they had a level of research literacy already. They come from a wide variety of backgrounds. They come from different degree programs, different universities, different countries. In fact, quite often we have many international students who come to us to train to teach. So we needed to set a base level. We needed to actually give them the skills that would allow them to become research literate and then research active themselves. And that journey, as I'm sure you're aware, over a PGCE course of 1 year is a very, very short space of time. So it's an incredibly steep learning curve. So we started to build them in those processes of actually trying to make sense of theory and practice, looking at training them to be observers. What do they see and how does that reflect to what they've learned? Making that kind of connection between them. Looking at specific practices of assessment for learning, those things they see on a day-to-day basis, and then reflecting on those and identifying their next steps, both for their own development and potentially for their research interests. Where might this take them when they come to look at their research project? Again, at the end of one of their school experience placements, reflecting on that and thinking about how does what I've learned address the learner's needs? How does this particularly focus on inclusion? And then focusing on developing those literacy skills, their research literacy skills, with the associate teachers to tie some of those things together. So we've looked at doing this. We've obviously got to do it rapidly, particularly over that process, but doing it in a way that builds people, builds their ability, builds their confidence and builds their capacity. And that then comes to the point where it culminates in a critical portfolio, collecting together of some of their work where they're able to give some critical analysis of the actual interventions, the work they've done within their school placements. And finally, a very small scale practitioner inquiry project, which is structured but given free rein within their own practice. Again, trying to set the stage, set the scene for what they can then take on as they become newly qualified teachers. And of course, these also help support the associate teachers meeting the relevant standards, particularly the innovation and the professional development standards that they'll need to meet as part of their professional development, gaining their QTS. So what are we looking for in terms of outcomes? Well, really 4 things. Carl and Jeremy have already talked about how this is designed to increase the research capacity that we have, but we're looking to support our associate teachers. For some you might know those as student teachers, but that's our terminology for them. But to actually support their development, to show them that they are owners of their own learning. So in what we're modelling with them, they're also able to put into practice with the children that they work with. So modelling that. Supporting existing teachers, our great workforce of mentors and schools who work with us, actually they're able to take part and be part of that particular process and actually integrate with the projects that the associate teachers are running within the schools. So again, perhaps you might think of it as a bottom-up way of bringing research into the schools, building capacity there, but actually allowing some of our associate teachers to work closely with their colleagues who may not have such recent research experience, but obviously have the access and have the knowledge and experience working with the children in the schools where they are. Supporting schools across that and looking at actual issues which schools need to find out about. So using the research capacity, expertise of Cierei and colleagues who are working, our researchers there, PhDs, ED folk who are working to come in and deliver to our students, both at undergraduate and postgraduate level, and then also taking those projects to schools to support the learning that happens in schools. Ultimately, with the aim of really developing the research culture. So not just the activity, but a culture of scholarly research that happens within both the university, but partnering equally with all of those people involved in network schools, lead schools, Cierei and Dysgwyr. So we move from this model of perhaps universities sitting in an ivory tower and using some guinea pigs that exist in local schools, if I can be blunt about it, but actually to a collaborative approach where we are all involved in this research culture which tells us how we can progress and improve. So I'm going to leave you at that point so that Jane's got a little bit of time left and hand over to Jane Pegram. Okay, thanks very much. Carry on.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about 2 research studies, if I have time. I'll try my best. Which was working with a large cluster in North Wales. So just to give you a little bit of background, the cluster approached Dysgwyr and Bangor University in the hope to kind of introduce more research and help the cluster kind of move towards a more evidence-informed approach to their teaching and learning. And that's when I was kind of brought in as a PhD student and have been working with the cluster now. This is my third year. So I'm going to talk about so some of the questions that the cluster kind of wanted to ask was, in particular, the kind of focus was around well-being initially, but obviously they'd come to realise that it wasn't just well-being that was important, that it was also obviously the academic side, which was important to look at. So they wanted to know, what are we currently doing in our schools? You know, what provision do we actually offer? Because individual schools they knew, but as a cluster, did they really know what was kind of going on? And then they wanted to know, does it have an evidence base? Is the stuff that we're using a good quality? And then it also kind of then morphed into another project that looked at kind of budgeting and, you know, resources in schools, so not only money, but also, you know, teacher time. So the first study was basically a methodology to determine the range and quality of school-based interventions. So my aim was to find out from the schools what they're actually doing. So very simply, we asked, so how many interventions or strategies are being used in schools? What type of interventions and strategies are being used? So, you know, is it for literacy, numeracy, social emotional learning? And do interventions have an evidence base that shows a positive impact on a pupil outcome? So I devised a questionnaire and asked head teachers and senior leaders who were also appointed to help with the study to send me everything that you do, basically. And I kind of did open it up so as to not miss anything, really. So I did get a wide range of things which were kind of removed from the list, and I'll talk very quickly about some of those numbers. So initially 190 interventions were collated, and then and they were screened, and I used, which I'll just go to there, I kind of applied a criteria, so an inclusion and exclusion criteria, and that's just some of the examples of the things that were included, which is quite wide-ranging, really. And just to say, so 120 were collected from the cluster of 9 schools, which seems an enormous amount. And I ended up removing the majority of those, so ended up with 70 interventions, which were then looked at for evidence. And the main reasons were simple things like some of the things that were sent to me were kind of classed as typical teaching. So they might have sent things like, you know, a game session or swimming and things like that. So I did remove those. There were also external, so things like behaviour support services being involved, they were removed. So it was only this kind of stuff that was happening in schools. And then there were other things like some of the interventions didn't have a clear methodology, so it might be things like anxiety group, behaviour management group, so they were removed from the study. So the 70 interventions went through a process of review. Firstly, looking at some of the evidence repositories out there, so the EEF, the EIF, just to see, is there anything on there? Is this accessible for teachers? Can teachers find out this stuff first off? And then I put the interventions through a kind of a rapid review process, so looked at all the published literature reviews, anything I could find, really. And very simply started with does it have evidence? Does it not have evidence? And if it does have evidence, is it effective? Then I found this method which is used in healthcare called GRADE, and it's they commonly use it to kind of grade the quality of studies. So, for example, if an intervention was found in a study, then it's given firstly an initial grade, which would be a grade of 4, which is a high grade, is a randomised controlled trial. A grade of 3 would be a quasi-experimental trial. This then goes through a number of criteria which will look at kind of some of the methods used. So, it'll ask questions about how many participants, was it a blind study, are there any confounders within the study? And that helps to kind of increase and decrease that score. So that gave it a rough quality score. these are some of the figures that resulted from the work. So the average number of interventions in each school was 24. 52% were academic interventions, 48% were well-being. The interesting thing that came out of well-being was the majority of the interventions were for enhancing kind of social and emotional skills. And schools had numerous interventions in their schools which were kind of doing the same thing. 44% of interventions had an evidence base. 36% of evidence-based interventions were academic. 64% of evidence-based interventions were for well-being. And 56% of interventions had no evidence available at the time of review. Now that was one of the important things that was kind of reported back to schools, was we highlighted just because it doesn't have evidence now doesn't mean that it's not effective. You know, it might be that there is a study in progress. It might be something that schools could look at implementing themselves, you know, some kind of pre and post test testing of the intervention. So following, have I got time to carry on?
2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So following this study, as I said, it opened up a number of interesting kind of outcomes, which one of them being schools do a lot. There's a lot of kind of additional stuff thrown in, and a number of the interventions actually do some of the same stuff, so there's a lot of crossover. So this opened up the question for the cluster, and they were kind of involved in saying, okay, so what next? What are we going to do with this? And one of our colleagues from, she does a lot of research around healthcare economics, which she's now kind of bringing across into education. She spoke to the cluster about programme budgeting and marginal analysis. So PBMA, I'll call it from here on in. And PBMA is a way of looking at kind of the interventions you're doing. So first off, you say, does it have evidence? Then it's looking at the kind of resources behind it. So the approach is about finding out where school funds can be saved through getting rid of things. Perhaps then there might be money for other things that, you know, are going to work better in the school. But it's a way of thinking about things as a whole. So a good example in this table is if you were thinking of, say, numeracy interventions. So you would have a table like this, and perhaps in A you might have catch-up numeracy, B you might have a SAFMEDS intervention, and in C you might have something like SumDog. They were just some of the things that were appearing in the interventions. So once we know whether they have evidence, you then work out a cost per pupil. You would then say, do children like it? Do the teachers like it? Do we have the resources to cover it? Do we have to pull in money from other places? And it helps schools to kind of reevaluate the interventions and perhaps decide that we don't need all those three things for numeracy, so we can perhaps get rid of B, and that then frees up all this time and all this money to invest in other areas. So it was just a good way of helping schools to kind of think a bit more critically about what they're doing. So in a nutshell, that is PBMA. It's in the process of being done at the moment, so there's not much I can say about the results of it, but we envisage that it's going to help schools to make more informed decisions around what they're doing. Are there any questions? Sorry, I rattled through that last bit.
We've got time just for 2 questions before we move on. If anybody's got a burning issue they wish to raise.
Could you just give us a couple of examples of interventions? Because you didn't have time to do that.
Yeah.
Just concrete examples of a couple of ones you looked at.
Ones with evidence or without?
I don't mind.
Okay, so there are a lot of rewriting, catch-up literacy, SAFMEDS, Head Sprouts. So when it came to well-being, there were a lot of things. So the Friends, Paths, promoting alternative thinking strategies, mindfulness was appearing. growth mindset was commonly appearing. I'm trying to think of the ones without evidence, which don't sit in my mind as well because they're kind of pushed to one side. But there were a lot of the ones without evidence were things like, these kind of ones where you can log into the computer and do these games around mathematics and things like that, which, they draw questions because some of the methods that are used are actually quite useful. And what we found from doing the PBMA stuff is some of them are very cost effective. So it again opens up that question of, is it worth, finding our own evidence? That's what the schools are kind of asking around it. I can't think of any more. Probably put pressure on there.
Jim, were these whole school interventions or teachers or focused on particular groups of pupils?
Everything. Yeah, what we kind of said, it was not teaching as normal, but everything else. So be it stuff that was delivered to the whole school, it could also have been, the group work, individual work, and then simple things like adjustments that might have to be made for certain pupils as well. We included those, as long as it wasn't taking away from learning. That was my one caveat. I had to kind of help them to learn, not take away learning. Thanks.